Hey everybody, I'm Tarl with Fixated Real Estate. Welcome once again to another episode of Analyzing Deals Like a Pro. Now, what if you could make $50,000 today, right now, on a property that you bought, rehab, and sold, and you were guaranteed, you knew you're gonna make that 50 grand when you're done with the project? What if you could do that? Or what if you had the option on that same property to not make that 50 grand today, but instead rent it out and make a few $100s a month and delay your gratification of that 50 grand? Would you choose the 50 grand now, or would you choose the couple $100 now and the 50 grand later? Now, many of us out there would do what I did for many, many years, which is just fix and flip properties and make the cash now, versus keeping the property and making the cash later. Now, I would what you would call a recovering house flipper. I have flipped over 600 homes in my career, yet as I was doing that, I was making a very high income and I was building up a lot of income doing that, yet I was building no wealth. You make money and you make income flipping houses, but you do not build wealth. You build wealth keeping properties and building up assets. Now, it took me too many years, in my opinion, before I figured it out. But since figuring it out, I decided to do something called the BRRRR method: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. That's where you buy a messed up property like a fixer-upper, and instead of selling it at the end and making that net profit, which you also get taxed on, you decide to keep it and rent it out and put it into your portfolio. Now, if you do it right, many videos out there that I've done and others out there show you how you could do what's called an infinite BRRRR. That's where you get an infinite return on your money. That's where you refinance at the end of the project right after renting it out, and you get all your money back that you put into the project. And if you did all of that right, you built up high equity, you refinanced, get all your money back out of the deal, and you rent it out and get a cash flow, you're essentially getting an infinite return on your money because you have no money into the deal and you're getting cash flow every single month. Who wouldn't want to do that? Who wouldn't want a property like that? It's basically a free property after you put some labor into it in the beginning. Yet, when is it okay to not do an infinite BRRRR? When is it okay to instead do the BRRRR, but yet leave money into the deal? What if you had to leave $40,000 into a deal, but that $40,000 leaving into the deal gave you a 20% ROI, annualized rate of return on your money every single year? There are many investors out there right now that would love to get a 20% return on their money. They'd ask me, where is that and where can I sign up? So when is it okay to do that in a BRRRR? So I'm going to show you guys today, right now, on a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot property just outside of Seattle, Washington, how we had to make the decision of, instead of making $50,000 today, leaving almost $40,000 into a deal to net a 20% return on our investment doing this BRRRR. But on top of that, I'm going to give you all the great stuff that we always go through in these videos. I'm going to show you how we acquired. I'm going to show you how we made the decisions to do what we actually did. I'm going to show you all the rehab, the analysis. But most importantly, I'm going to show you all the pro tips and go over when a BRRRR is a good BRRRR, but really importantly, when it is a bad BRRRR, and all the situations that can happen to where a BRRRR can go very wrong, such as your financing is messed up, such as you renting out the property but not qualifying for the refinance. Those kind of situations that can make things go very south for you on a BRRRR. Now, for those of you guys that stick around to the end, I'm going to show you how we simplify and systemize our finishes in all our projects, that not only if you follow a process that we do for systemizing and simplifying your entire finishes packets, it's going to save you so much time, energy, and effort in your deals as you continue forward in this business. So stick around with it and let's get after it right now. So let's get into it. So look at the before photo here. If you're driving through a neighborhood and you see a house like this and you're doing something what's called like driving for dollars, which is where you drive neighborhoods looking for physically distressed properties such as this, would you put this property on your list? Now, many of you guys out there right now that drive for dollars, you're looking for houses like this. Obviously, there's some wear and tear out on the outside. There's some possible issues. The neighborhood has some possible challenges in it. And you're looking for houses that have some sort of like long grass, messed up roof. Maybe the paint's faded. Maybe the siding's messed up. Who knows? But there's many things that could be wrong with the exterior of a house. And when you drive for dollars on these properties, the whole purpose of it is to create a list of dilapidated or distressed type properties that you can reach out to the possible seller and hopefully maybe work out a deal to where you can buy the property direct from seller. There's a lot of videos out there that you could research on and a lot of information that you could research on driving for dollars and how to do it right, and also get direct to seller contact with these people so you could possibly negotiate with them and get what's called an off-market deal. Anson Young with BiggerPockets, he's written a book on this. He also has some videos right now on the BiggerPockets YouTube channel that you can watch specifically on driving for dollars. Now, the reason why I bring that up in this particular property is that this house right here, one of our teammates that works with us, Mr. Nate, he found this property driving for dollars and then skip traced the seller, which is where he got their cell phone information by going to a skip tracing service, and cold called the seller to find out if they wanted to sell or not. And lo and behold, this property was vacant and was vacant for a long time, and they were in the middle of rehabbing it, yet they didn't rehab it anymore for a long time, and they wanted to get rid of it. So it was sitting there, messed up property on the interior, messed up property on the exterior. The seller was motivated to sell. He just didn't like very many people. So he just sat on it, owned it cash, free and clear, didn't care about it. But for some reason, the right person called him. That was Nate, and he liked Nate, and he was willing to sell it to him. Now, lucky for me, Nate's part of my team. So we were able to acquire the property direct from the seller, and we bought the property for $186,000. Now, some of you guys might be turning off the video right now just at the thought of buying this particular property. Let's pop it up on the screen again. This property, this 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot home in Tacoma for $186,000. Some of you guys might be thinking, wow, that is a ridiculous price. You got ripped off. Well, I want to ask you guys a question. What part of the United States are you in, or what part of the world are you in? Everything is based on comparables. Comparables are properties of like kind in the specific geographic area of the property you're buying this from. So in Tacoma, Washington, in this particular neighborhood, high quality properties that are 4-bedroom, 2-bath sell for almost $400,000. So you were basically buying a property for less than half off. That needs a little bit of work. So if you could justify the after repair value, ARV, to what the property is worth after you fix it up, in this case, possibly $400,000, and get your negotiated sales price, what you purchased the property for, to also buffer in the rehab costs to be able to fix it up to get to the ARV, then that's a good deal. Now, in this particular area, if they would have listed this house, they probably could have sold it for almost $200,000. But we were able to get it for $186,000 because of negotiating direct with the seller, no real estate commissions or anything like that. And it was a great deal for us to buy at that time. So why did we get this property so cheap? There's a few things wrong with it. I'm going to go over the before photos here in a second. Now, keep in mind, we take a ton of photos every single property that we walk before we buy it so that we can analyze the deals without ever having to walk it, or more importantly, without me ever having to walk the property. So one of my teammates walks the property. You can have wholesalers do this for you. Real estate agents do this for you. You can have interns do this for you. There's a lot of ways to do this to where you get a lot of pictures of the property on the inside and outside so that you can hopefully analyze it without actually ever going to it. Now, you can also take a lot of photos of these properties yourself so that you can analyze it when you go back to your home on your computer from the comfort of your home. So let me show you here. So we bought the property for $186,000 and we estimated $80,000 of rehab. And at that time, we thought we could sell it for $385,000 when we're done with it. So we thought it was going to be a good flip. If you do the math on that after selling, closing costs, and so forth, it was going to be a pretty good deal, over $50,000 net profit. So let's go over this. Let me show you guys some of the photos here. We'll show you why we got such a good deal on it, or at least what we think was a good deal on it for how messed up it was. Now you can see from the exterior here, the siding is a little messed up. The landscaping is not so good. It's got a chain link fence. You can see some newer windows, which is kind of cool. But as you get in a little bit closer, you can see the siding is a little bit more messed up than possibly from further away. There's some holes in it. The T111 on the side of the house is getting in pretty good disrepair. The gutters are messed up. There's obvious water damage in different spots. The backyard landscaping is not looking so good. There's a Quickie Mart right behind it, and which with a nice alleyway that everybody likes to hang out at. That shouldn't be hanging out there. The back of the house, you can totally tell the roof's messed up with the property as well. Now, when you're walking these properties and you're walking the exterior, the interior, or whatever you're doing, you should have a checklist of big ticket items, or red flags, what I like to call red flags, that are big priced items that might make a deal go south. Now, when you're walking the exterior of a house like this, there's some big ticket items that we already saw. We saw that the roof is messed up. We saw that the siding's messed up. We saw that the landscaping in the backyard is pretty messed up. But another big ticket item that might not be so aware of for other people is that when I showed you, go back to that photo, when I showed you guys that there's a Quickie Mart in the backyard. Now, in the backyard there with that alleyway, we're like, this is a red flag because a lot of traffic, a lot of foot traffic and so forth could be going back and forth from the backyard of this property. So we might need to build a great fence, something that blocks the view or blocks, for security purposes, people coming back and forth in the back of that property. So that is actually a red flag on this house. It also could deter the value of the property. So when you're doing your comps, your comparables on a property like this, you need to take into fact the surrounding areas directly around the house itself, not just how many bedrooms, baths, and square footage that there are for the actual property. You also need to take in fact that the neighbor's property might not be so good, or behind the house is an alleyway with a Quickie Mart. Not everybody wants to live in a property like that, which might bring the value down at the end of the day. Now, we counted that into fact, which is why we based it on $385,000 versus a lot of other properties for 400 plus in this neighborhood, believe it or not. And we took that into factor. Now, going back to the property, you can look here, like I just want to show you here, this is a clean out to a sewer. This is a big issue for us later in the property, but I always encourage people to do what's called a sewer scope on every single house, which we did, but I'm going to come back to that later and why that was an issue for us in the future on this project. Of course, you got a lot of Comcast cable in the back of that, or cable, like for cable internet and cable TV. We have a tendency, we want to kind of find, side note, when you flip a lot of houses, we like to cut all that crap out. Just because it gets in the way of the painting and so forth, and we'll let somebody else install it later. But when you start keeping these as BRRRR rentals, you sometimes have to remember to leave the cable installed on the property so that you don't pay for it later when you get a tenant in there, which we've done more than once on many, many of these projects. So let's go back into the property itself. So when you walk in there, you can see that this house has no sheetrock at all. This person was in the middle of rehabbing the property. And by middle, they stopped rehabbing it over a year before we bought it. They decided that they just didn't want to work it on it anymore, and they just sat on it because they owned it all cash. But you have no sheetrock on it. They were looking at remodeling it, opening up the floor plan. They did a bunch of work on it. And at first glance, you can go like, okay, well, they did a great floor plan. It's not so bad. Maybe we just have to sheetrock it, do a little bit of electrical and plumbing and so forth. It's really important when you buy a property that's already gutted like this one here, that when you're going to get permits, that the work that a homeowner did or even a potential contractor did might not be to code for that particular municipality that you're pulling permits on. So always double check before you buy a property that's partway through rehab. One, is the property done, is the work done correctly? That's probably the most important part. Is the framing right? Is the plumbing and electrical done right? You can't assume that it's all good to go just because the seller said so. In this particular house, most of the framing was good to go, so luckily for that, but not all the plumbing was and not all the electrical was. So we had to send our electrician and our plumber in there later in the project to fix up the electrical and plumbing mistakes that were done that weren't to code for that particular area for permitting purposes. Now, going upstairs, you can see there's multiple bedrooms up here. Everything's just open up. But in a nutshell, what's simplified is that the floor plan is looking pretty good and the electrical and plumbing turned out all right. This is actually not that complicated of a project. Now, some of us might be scared of it because we might be thinking there's a lot of work to still be done. But if you're not changing the framing and you're not doing much with the electrical and plumbing on a house that's already been, framed up and set with electrical and plumbing like this, then all you got to do is make sure the plumbing and electrical is good to go. Make sure the framing is going to pass inspection. And once you do all that great stuff, you just got to insulate and sheetrock and put all the finishes in. It basically becomes almost a cosmetic remodel on the interior once sheetrock comes up, because you're just doing finishes at that point. We'll show you guys what that looks like a little bit later. Now, this particular house had a roof leak. That's why you saw some of that work right there. That's a roof damage. We already knew right away when we were buying this property. Another big red flag is that we're going to be replacing a roof. That was a good sized cost because of the pitch and the height of the roof. There's part of where the leak comes. Now, quick side fun note, this is actually lath and plaster. So this can show you why is there lath and plaster basically behind the 2x6s that are here. That's because they dropped the ceiling down at some point for framing. So the original ceiling was actually higher. Quick side note, who cares? You might not buy 100-year-old houses like this one is in the future. Now, to give you guys a little bit of perspective on the rehab, if you're first starting out and this is your very first type of project, you might want to pass on a deal like this that obviously needs a lot of work. Right, putting in all brand new sheetrock, making sure that it's good to go for code purposes, bunch of framing issues, roofs. You have to do 100% of the finishes on the inside because there's none there. You might want to pass on this deal if you have no rehab experience or connections or anything like that. But if you have a little bit of experience or a little bit of know-all or know-how or a little bit of desire to learn and really get after it, this might be a deal for you. In this particular case, we knew we needed roofs. We knew we needed to replace siding. We know we needed to give it a facelift in the front. We know we needed to fix some of the windows that were messed up and do almost 100% of the interior minus framing, electrical, and plumbing. Just some minor stuff to make it pass inspection. So once sheetrock's up, we just have to do all the cosmetic updates and finishes and be good to go. Now I want to show you guys one of the things that we do is we always do a floor plan on every property we buy. Sometimes we get really in depth and make some great floor plans using something called Home Designer Pro, which will show you our as-built, which is before we fix something up. But in the meantime, before we ever get to that point, we just sketch up a basic floor plan as fast as possible while we're at the property or when we get home after walking it, just so we can have a good idea of what the floor plan looks like and not just have the photos. So here's something as simple as our floor plan that our guy Nate drew up for us. We're on the first floor. You can see like, he's not even that great of an artist, right? But he's good enough. So he draws a nice little rectangle there. You can see that the stairs are on the right. You go through a kitchen, makeshift kitchen, washer dryer in the back area, bathroom in the left side, and of course a bedroom chilling right there. You go into the upstairs, and once again, you have 3 bedrooms up there and another bathroom. I get a basic idea of the layout of the house while I'm looking at these photos so I can analyze it a little bit better and never having to walk the property. Now to take it to level 11, you can also use Home Designer Pro to get you some accurate as-built, or you can hire a drafter, or you can draw these them yourself using other programs like AutoCAD and so forth. Now, this particular property, we always use the program we use that I mentioned, and we also have to do this because we want to get permits. So in order to get permits, we did the as-built. This is the actual layout of what it really looked like, not this chicken scratch thing that Nate built for us. And this is the first floor. Pretty basic, got the measurements, so forth, and placement, and we can actually submit these for permitting, showing this is what it looked like before we fixed it. Now we take these same plans and we do what's called a proposed floor plan, which is what we use to also get permits to show what the work we're going to do on the project. And here are the proposed plans, which there's not very much different about it other than the kitchen layout's a little bit different and done right. Now, if you go to the upstairs, one of the mistakes that I think we really made on this project is on the upstairs, we don't have a master bedroom. We decided for project purposes and cost effectiveness and how we decided to buy it that we weren't going to change any of the framing really at all on the project, and we're going to keep it as is to try to save cost. While doing so, we got so tunnel vision on doing that we didn't realize we didn't have a master suite. Now, a master suite, when you have a higher price point in particular markets, makes it a lot more desirable. We could have easily made this bathroom into a Jack and Jill bathroom by just adding a door right on this side over here so that this bedroom goes back and forth into the bathroom. We could have changed the floor plan a little bit if we wanted to. We could have adjusted things. But that, honestly, doing as many properties as we've done, you think we would have thought about that. But we just got too narrowed focused on the deal and skipped that process altogether and didn't catch it actually until the very end of the deal when we decided to rent it out, and that was one of the complaints on the project. Yet, at the same time, by keeping the property very similar on the floor plan to what we started with, it made it a lot faster and a lot easier for us to get permits on the property with the city of Tacoma. Now, speaking of permits, keep in mind, every municipality is different. Every city is different with what they're going to require of you. So make sure you know, that's one pro tip right there. Make sure you know what your city is going to require for you in order to get permits for your project. And also know that at what level do the permits get way harder to get. You might be planning out on a deal that you're going to just be able to start it and turn it in 3 months. But yet some cities take 3 months to get permits. So you got to make a decision on what you're going to do with that information. So don't go starting a project yet without finding out the info in that city of what you need to be able to get permits and make the right decision for yourself on how you should structure that deal. Okay, so before I get into all the details of the actual structure of this deal for the BRRRR, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, and how all the numbers work and some of the pro tips involving it, Let's just go straight to the end and show you guys how this property turned out when we were done rehabbing it, so you get a little bit of a wow factor here. So here's the property, we're done. Now you can see right here, we changed the entire front of the property to give it a much better curb appeal by changing the siding and putting all brand new hardy plank siding on the front. Now here's a quick little tip for you guys on that side. When you have a house like this that you can't see the sides of the house, does that mean that you have to replace all the siding on the entire house with hardy plank when the sides of the house actually don't look too bad at all and the siding was just fine? That's right. So in this particular house, we only replaced the siding on the front and we repaired the damaged areas on the side and the back because nobody saw those sides in the back and it wasn't going to change anything in the value. Now, I'll tell you what did change the value on this property. One is the neighbor to the left that you can see right there that we actually are trying to work with right now. And also the Quickie Mart in the back. So we had to build this fence. Now, legally in this particular part of the neighborhood, we can only build a fence, a half fence in the front of the property. So we had to build a fence all the way around the full 360 of the property and make it very big in the back of the property and as short like it is here to be able to help give us some sort of buffer from the surrounding neighborhood so to make it a little bit more appealing for somebody to live in. But that said, you could see when we go inside the house, we definitely have sheetrock up right now. And the floor plan is very, very similar to what it originally was. Now, here's another side note on rehab stuff. We like to use LVP, that's luxury vinyl planking, for our rentals. We feel that that flooring holds up a little bit better than different laminates and so forth. And we also think that it gives a little bit more value for a property for a BRRRR, so that way it gets a higher appraised value for finish level and possibly even give us a little bit more rent. So here's one pro tip for you guys right now. When you're flipping properties, you're always flipping for the highest and best value as much as possible. Not every property should do that, but as much as property, you're trying to get the highest, most possible. You're trying to get the highest and best value for your flip so you can make as much profit. Now for BRRRRs, some people skip that process and they comp the deal based on the highest and best value, but then they rehab it based on rental quality. So here's one pro tip, and here's one big mistake that a lot of people do on BRRRRs, which is where they fix it to rent ready versus flip ready, and they comp the property basis flip ready, not rent ready. Now, why is that important? It's important because of the appraised value that you're going to receive on the actual deal itself. Now, you can tell here on this particular property, we have LVP flooring down, we have quartz countertops, we have full wood, soft closed drawer, shaker cabinets, we have stainless steel throughout the property, we have all brand new windows. There's also brand new electrical plumbing throughout as well. This is a higher end finish on the inside in a neighborhood like this. Now, why would we do this for a property that we're going to rent out? Why? There's a few reasons. One, we feel that we can get a little bit higher rent for having a better quality product, but most importantly, all the higher end flips or higher end flips for this neighborhood had quartz, had tile backsplashes, had newer electrical. So therefore, when we go to appraise the property later to get our refinance, we're more likely to get a higher value. Versus the big mistake, which is if we put in Formica countertops, carpet everywhere, sheet vinyl and so forth, we get a much lower value on the property, even though it'd be better quality for rent, lower value, which means that we'd have to leave even more money into the deal or might not even have the property appraised at all and make it a very bad deal for us because we comped it at a higher fix and flip value for the property itself. So keep that in mind. Your finishes must match whatever your comparables are that you're comping the property on for your appraised value, or else it can bite you in the butt later down the line. I'm also going to show you guys a little tip later in this video about how you can systemize and simplify your finishes. So going through it, you can see it's a very nice property. The updated the bath, we updated upstairs. We made everything nice and neat. We like to put carpet upstairs. There's some sheet vinyl here in the upstairs. Bathroom, this is that bathroom I said that we made the mistake on of not putting in like a pocket door here or something to make this a Jack and Jill bathroom, so kind of a master suite. We could have probably gotten a bigger vanity, but going back to comps, basically said we didn't need a big, huge vanity, and we also didn't need to tile the bathrooms. We could keep the tiles in fiberglass format, which that was fine for this particular neighborhood, and that was okay. But a lot of properties we have for BRRRRs, we actually tile everything and put big, huge vanities in. There's the back of the property, once again, with a bigger fence that we had to build. And it was a very large fence with lots and lots of wood, and wood's very expensive right now. So that fence was a budget item that we didn't budget for, unfortunately, when we first bought this property. That was almost with landscaping. There's a lot of landscaping, believe it or not. and the fence. That was an additional $6,000 that we weren't really budgeting for. So that we, spoiler alert, we went over budget a little bit on this house. Not too much, but a little bit. So where did we mess up? Now, we messed up on a few things on the rehab. We already said it. We messed up on not creating a master suite. I think we would have gotten a little bit better value or rented it out a little bit easier. We also messed up by not budgeting for a really big fence throughout the whole property to keep out the rest of the neighborhood and make it feel a little bit more secure for whoever was going to buy it or whoever's going to rent it. And I also want to go back to this picture here that I mentioned earlier. This is the sewer cleanout. The sewer cleanout, we always do what's called a sewer scope on our properties before we buy it, because in our neck of the woods in Seattle, Tacoma area, there's a lot of really old houses with old sewers. And one bad thing to do is to buy a property, fix it all up, put a tenant in it, and then have the sewer backed up because the sewer had failed and was collapsed. Well, guess what? That happened to us on this one. So we did do a sewer scope. However, we forgot to look at it. This sometimes happens when you have team members and you don't have it in your process to review the sewer scope, where the sewer was actually messed up, but we forgot about it. We didn't look at it, and we didn't even do our own process, so failure on our part, to where after we were done with the entire rehab, you saw all those photos, the house is already done, and we rented out to a beautiful tenant that paid a bunch of money for it every single month, and within the first few days of them living there, the sewer backs up and starts flooding because the sewer was messed up. It was collapsed. It was an old clay pipe sewer. And so we had to jump in there immediately, figure out why that is. And we found the sewer scope, realizing that we messed up there. So we had to take care of that. We had to go fix that. We spent a few more $1,000 fixing that, apologizing to the tenant, making it up for them in many, many ways, and making the house brand new again. Luckily, the tenant was very forgiving. They understood, and they put up with our mess up. So not only did we have the $6,000 fence and landscaping that we weren't really budgeting for, we also had the few $1,000 on top of that for the sewer issue that we definitely didn't budget for, as well as a few minor change orders. So where does that bring us? Instead of spending $80,000 of rehab on this project, we spent $94,000 of rehab. Now, we were on budget for the most part, except for a few minor change orders, such as the electrical and plumbing, and then, of course, the fence and the sewer issue that I just brought up to you guys. So there's the 14 grand extra that we spent. Now, when we go to refinance this project, we got it appraised. And destiny has it, it appraised for $400,000 for us, which made up for the actual overage that we had in rehab costs. Now, I don't think you should ever run a business that you hope that the market goes up. I believe full-heartedly, and I have past videos on this for you guys to watch on BiggerPockets channel, that where if you have a property that the only reason why it is a success for you is because the market went up, then I don't believe at all that you are a success in that particular project. I think you got lucky. So the market, do we want it to go up? Yes, we do. Do I want to take that money from that appraisal? Yes, I do, right? Do I want to sell the property for more? Of course I do. But do I want to bet my business that the market's going to keep going up? No, I'm not going to do that. That's how you get bit hard in the future, potentially, if you continue to do that in this business. So keep that in mind. That's another big pro tip. Never, long-term, in this business, always keep betting on the market. Some people might say otherwise, but I think that's going to mess you up if you think you buy a project just because you think it's going to go up. Sometimes you'll be right, but one day you'll be wrong. So we rehab this property. We spent $94,000 of rehab on it, and we decided to refinance the deal. And after appraising for $400,000, we were able to do a rate refinance and cash out refinance for $296,250. Now, what does that mean? After buying it for $186,000, having holding costs on the deal, spoiler alert on this one, we got it during lockdown with COVID in 2020. So there was a few months in this deal where I had to sit there and do nothing. Permitting got delayed. The project got delayed. Nobody was working on it. Nobody was legally allowed to work on it for a period of time in where we were. So we had a few more months of holding costs. So after interest charges, holding costs, overages in rehab, we refinanced it for $296,000. And that left us with a principal, interest, taxes, and insurance payment, PITI, at a 3.125% interest rate, 30-year fixed, for $1,574 a month. Now, the good news is on that, we rented it out for $2,350 a month, more than we thought we'd rent it out for. We could probably rent it out more for today, right? But we like the tenant, $2,350 a month. giving us a net operating income of $776 a month before any property management or capital expenditures. Now, here's another pro tip for you. If you rehab a property to practically new build standards, such as we did on this, everything's brand new on this property, literally everything, then why do you need to come up with capital expense as a way to measure the rate of return on your deal? Most landlords out there are doing things like vacancy, CapEx, capital expenditure. They're also doing property management fees and so forth to find out their true return on their property. I agree with that 100%, except when you do a property like this. This is pretty much like buying a brand new house. When you buy a brand new house, are you going to have very many CapEx expenses on a property within the first few years? Probably not. If you do, it's probably warranted. This particular property, we feel that's the case, so we don't actually calculate CapEx for the first 2 to 3 years on any of our BRRRRs that we do a full gut job like we did on this one. Vacancy is a different story and property management is a different story. So without property management, we're netting $776 a month. If you pay for property management, most property management out there is 8%. That's additional $188 a month on this particular deal that you have to pay, so it reduces your cash flow just a little bit. Now that all sounds great. You do a BRRRR, you refinance for $296,000 and you're cash flowing a little over $700 a month. If you stop right there, that's a great deal because you can still sell it and net $51,000 net cash after you sell the deal. But there's one more thing we're missing on this. We didn't get just $700 a month cash flow on this deal. The only way that we were able to refinance it because that it only appraised for $400,000, and because we went over in rehab, and because we held on to it longer and had more finance charges and costs involved in it than we originally anticipated, we had to leave $41,658 into the deal. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that $41,658 of my dollars, or my company's dollars, my dollars, is invested in that deal still that I had to leave in there. Just like you would buy a property for 20% down, like a normal landlord would, a rental property, buy a property for 20% down, they have to actually put a deposit down, or deposit down. Down payment, there you go, down payment of 20%, and then finance 80% of the remaining of the deal. That's what most landlords have done forever on buying rental properties. And this particular deal, I had to invest $41,000 and leave it into the deal, unlike an infinite BRRRR where I get all that money back. Now, why would I want to do that? Well, in this particular case, if I left $41,000 into the deal and had no property management, we do property management in-house in our particular portfolio in Tacoma, so we don't get charged for it. That's a 22.35% return on my money. Most everybody out there right now would love to get a 22% return on their money. Yet if you also include property management, it boils down to a 16.9% rate of return on your money, which a lot of landlords would take today. Because most landlords right now are looking for an 8 to 10% return on their money after they buy a property for 20% down. Now, here's a tip for you guys on this. When you guys buy a property as a traditional landlord and you put 20% down, if you sold that property a month later, are you losing money or making money? Now, in most neck of the woods in the United States, you are immediately losing money on a deal as soon as you buy it, if you sold it within 30 days or even a few months after buying it. Why? You buy a property for full price. Let's say in this particular property, you buy it for 400 grand. You put 20% down. In this particular case, that would be $80,000. And then you go to try to sell it the next month. If the property didn't go up in value, you're losing a bunch of money in selling costs, commissions, taxes, insurance, all that great stuff that come out of the deal on the back end if you sold it right away. Versus a BRRRR, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, where even though we're only netting 22% on this particular deal and we had to leave $41,000 in it, if we sold it immediately after we were done rehabbing it, immediately after renting it, we would still get that $51,000 net profit on this deal. So is my return really only 22% on this deal? No, it's much higher once I sell the deal in the future. So here's another pro tip for you. At what point do you want to be able to keep a house as a rental versus selling it for profit? That's going to depend on your particular situation financially. So the pro tip that I want to give you guys on this one here on BRRRRs is that if you don't need the money right now, then why pay the taxes on it that you're going to get from selling the property today versus putting a tenant on it and deferring your taxes into the future and getting taxed at capital gains versus income. You could also potentially do a 1031 as long as you're still allowed to do 1031s, depending on when this video comes out. But 1031 exchange that can also defer the actual taxes into another property. And I have some videos out there on BP that could show you guys how we do that. So I'm going to end this video on a few things that could go very, very wrong for you on a BRRRR. BRRRRs sound great. We all want to do it. We're all excited about it. Our good friend Brandon Turner coined the term BRRRR. BiggerPockets is known for the BRRRR strategy. I've done a ton of BRRRRs and I've also done a ton of videos on BRRRRs. So I definitely love this strategy. But when can it go really wrong? When is it not right? I already showed you right now, one of the ways that it's not right is you have to leave money into the deal. And if you don't have the money to leave into the deal and you already rented it out to a tenant, this is the biggest mistake and biggest issue that comes up with these, is you get a 12-month lease with a tenant, then you go to refinance with a bank and you don't qualify for the loan to do the refi. You're now stuck with a property that you cannot sell as easily if it was vacant. Could you sell a property with a tenant in it? Yes. Is it easier to sell it when it's vacant? Yes. Sometimes you can sell it for a lot more. So that's one of the big mistakes in the BRRRR strategy that if you're not planning for right, you got to make sure your finances are strong enough to refinance on the back end. I mentioned this earlier, that another thing that could go wrong is that if you do rent grade finishes, but comp the property at fix and flip grade finishes, and your appraisal comes in low. When your appraisal comes in low and you don't have the money to leave into the deal, that can also mess you up. Now, all of a sudden, you have to sell the deal, and hopefully you can sell it in time before any kind of financing charges or hard money lender terms on your loan come up. Now, this is why I encourage people also to go ahead and go out there and flip a few houses. Go out there and try a few things. Go partner with somebody. Go talk and ask questions to other investors and how they do what they do, this business, so you can learn from this as much as possible. I believe that if you flip a few houses or wholesale a few houses, then it's going to make it a lot easier for you to BRRRR houses because you're going to get the skills that you need to be able to go through this entire process like I showed you now. I also think that you should constantly check in with your deals. Double check your numbers as you're going through the deal. Double check your strategy to make sure it's the right strategies that's for you in that particular deal at that time. If for whatever reason that this property looked like it wasn't going to appraise like we wanted to appraise, or we couldn't get the rent that we got for it, then I would have just sold this property as a flip and moved on before I actually rented it out and got stuck with the 12-month lease. So it's always great to have multiple exit strategies for a property as much as possible. If you can buy a property that you can either flip it or keep it as a rental and both ways work, that is the best way to do it all day if you can. Last but not least, I promised you guys that I'm going to show you guys a way that we systemize and simplify our finishes. And I just want to end on the video on this. Here's a big pro tip that I encourage you guys to do as much as possible. As you get into this business and you want to get rid of the headache of having to pick out finishes, number one is get somebody that is good at picking out finishes to do it for you. A lot of times I would get my realtor to pick out finishes for me when we were first starting out in this business, and eventually we did that stuff in-house. The other thing that I found out is that if you start going to other house flippers projects and seeing what they're doing to be able to sell their properties, or other comparables in the neighborhood to see what finishes they were using, you could kind of copy what they were doing. Now, over the years, we've compiled lists of our finishes that we've done, and we've essentially narrowed it down to just a few finishes that we do on almost every project, every single time for years. So why have the headache of having to pick a new finish for every single project? Your property, especially if it's an investment, not always, unless you're doing a super high-end project, is not a blank canvas for you to be able to let your artistic abilities fly, right? It's an investment, it's a commodity. You should make it a blank canvas for the new buyer to buy so they can make it their own. So we like to go neutral yet nice, so that a new homeowner that buys our properties can make it their own. If they want to do accent walls, let them do it themselves. If they want to be able to change things up a little bit, let them do that. But do it so nice that they don't have to if they don't want to, but neutral enough to where it applies to most people. Yet, of course, going off the comparables in the neighborhood. So here's something I want you guys to aspire to when it comes to your finishes. This is what we call a finish packet. It's taken us a couple years to put together for ourselves, but this is a finish packet that we do for every single project that we do. Here's a pro tip. Never let your general contractors pick out your finishes. They're always going to pick the cheap ones, and it might always be the good ones. So especially if you're a real estate investor, pick out your finishes, have a team member on your team pick out your finishes, have your realtor pick them out. If you don't know how to do it, get an interior designer to do it for you, and then just duplicate what they do for all the projects later in the future as much as possible. So we've spent a long time putting together a packet that we save in a program called Smartsheet. Don't get Smartsheet if you don't want to waste a lot of time, but you can also do this in Excel and Google Sheets. To where we can just basically pick our finishes line item by line item, and we hand it to our contractors so they can bid it out themselves. So this is the exact finish packet that we used on this project. You can see our front door here. It has a picture of it, how much it costs at the time that we did this project, even the item number, SKU number, and then we buy it for Lowe's. The door handle that you use in the front, what it costs, buying it from Home Depot, the SKU number. We thought originally we were going to do the back door, so we had that in the finish packet, but then we exited out later because we found out the back door was actually good quality. We didn't really need to replace it. Heck, we even have the address numbers to put on this particular deal, so they know that they got to buy the $8 nice ones that are at the Home Depot, Lowe's, similar thing, the Hillman Group Distinctions 5-inch elevated color black, right? Now, here's a quick side note. I don't pick out these finishes. I am horrible at picking out finishes. I hate picking out finishes. So that's why we spent so much time over the years systemizing this as much as possible so that I never have to pick out a finish again or think about it. Just like I don't want to think about what shirt I'm going to wear. That's why I only own a few of them. I have the same ones. If you guys notice, discipline equals freedom, these kind of property, it doesn't matter. I only have a few shirts that I wear every single day because I don't want to think about it. So how can I not think about my finishes? Develop a process like this to where you can have all the finishes that you would normally choose for one of your projects and then just send it to your contractor. Our good buddy Jay Scott, who's also done a lot of stuff with BiggerPockets, talks at depth about systemizing finishes as much as possible so you don't have to think about it. Now, know your comps, know your area, know your neighborhood, because everyone is different and every part of the US is a little different what good finishes are. You can always overdo your finishes and you can always underdo your finishes. So do what's most neutral and most beneficial for your property, for the neighborhood it's in, and then get to the point to where you start tracking these. You might not want to make a beautiful packet like that. Maybe one day you will. You might instead just save photos and just put it into an email and send it to your contractor, right? But have a place that you're saving these things so that you can access them in the future as quickly as possible and not have to think about it every single project that you start. It's a big goal to achieve, but trust me when I say this, the second that you can get to the point where you can simplify and systemize your finishes, it's one less thing to think about and one step closer to scaling your business to the next level. So I hope you guys like this video. It's a little bit all over the place, a little bit more in depth in some spots. We spent a lot of time on it, put a lot of thought into it for you guys. If you like these videos and if you want more of them, please comment, like, and subscribe to BiggerPockets. Definitely comment on this video. Let me know what you thought about it, what I could do differently. Also, if you want more of these, ask your questions. I do my best to go through the comments to answer them as I can through Fixated Real Estate on the BiggerPockets channel. You can also follow me on Instagram at Tarl Yarber. Make sure you guys, of course, follow BiggerPockets. They got a new book coming out here soon called The Multifamily Millionaire that our good friend Brandon Turner and Brian Murray is writing and just wrote. I think you can pre-order right now, so check that out. If you aren't just into single family but want to get into the multifamily game, it's going to be a good book. BiggerPockets has a ton of different books out there that you can go on BiggerPockets.com and check those out as well. They have whole entire things on the BRRRR process that our friend David Green wrote that book on that. And I also mentioned earlier a video from Anson Young about driving for dollars. That's on the BiggerPockets YouTube channel if you want to dive into that a little bit more. So once again, hope I check you guys out on the next video that we do for you. And until then, I'll see you later.